Well, hello and welcome back to today's episode of the Path Podcast. We are in the middle of our mini-series through the topic of fasting. It's been so fun just to dive into these episodes talking everything fasting. If you are new to this podcast or new to this community, we are part of X Church, church based in Southeast Ohio, Columbus area. We have been on a journey through 21 days of prayer and fasting as a community, and we have been taking some intentional time just to slow down and talk a little bit more about the topic of fasting, why we fast, what's the benefits, what are some of the misconceptions about it. Today we're going to dive into some of the practical things of how do you actually make it through the fast, what are some of the guardrails and things you should do around the fast in order to get the most out of it. And really the whole reason why we're doing this is because we know that a lot of people might have questions about the purpose of fasting, why they should fast, what they should do. It's kind of this mysterious topic, I think, in modern day Christianity. Not a lot of people have interacted with it or engaged with it. Even for us, we've been doing it for some time as a church community, but we just wanted to pause and go a little bit deeper. So it's going to be a ton of fun today. Joining with me, as always, I've got the wonderful Miss Addie Overla.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back.
So good to have you with us. And then I have the wild and amazing Miss Jessica Castles.
Hi.
So good to have you with us today. I'm going to start with this question. I've been asking everyone this question as we get started. Feel free to answer however you wish. But as you approach this year's fast, and we've been doing a fast as a church community for some time, anything different about your mindset? Anything maybe intentional that you're kind of bringing into this fast, maybe different in years past or approaching it in any sort of different way?
Oh, what a question.
I know.
I wouldn't be answering this truthfully if I told you no, because I really did have some different thoughts coming into this year's fast. And they were it was like a very internal struggle for me because I think that if you look at fasting in a biblical sense, it deals with food or water.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So your diet.
Yes.
Also, at the beginning of the year, there's usually some diet changes that people make.
Yes.
And personally, in the past, I've really struggled with the motive behind a diet fast at the beginning of the year and then a spiritual fast at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
And crossing those two paths together and really having trouble distinguishing my motives internally. Because, you know, if I start a diet fast or I give up a meal or I give up like coffee or food or some sort of, aspect to my diet, then I see results in the mirror or I see results on the scale and I get sidetracked.
That's real.
And I'm like,
no,
yay,
I think a lot of people
results.
Yes.
And then I forget about the spiritual results. So for me personally, I struggled with that this year. And so I decided not to do food or diet or anything and go a different route. But those were the thoughts that were coming through. I was kind of just, I don't know. I had some like, I hate that this is beginning of the year, but also spiritual. So I had trouble distinguishing. So I went a different route.
Good.
No, I think a lot of people actually probably can relate to that. Because I do think the beginning of the year often is a time where you change. Yeah, I'm going to change my routines. I'm going to change my patterns, change my habits, whatever it is. And I think when you coincide that with a fast, I think it's a good opportunity to kickstart something off the year strong. But yes, I do think the motivations can be mixed, and it's hard
and
to
it's just an interesting aspect because biblically, fasting is food.
Yeah.
And I struggled in years past with anything but food because I'm like, that's not a biblical fast. So like my very, educational academic brain was like, that's not a real fast.
Yeah. Which is funny because this is a perfect segue into the next question I want to ask you. You're someone who I know you think deeply about things. You do things with intention. And I think that for you, as you probably approached fast in previous years, okay, it's about how do I make sure I'm prepared, I'm doing this well, I'm doing this in the way that I know God wants me to do it. And so just give me an insight or a window into your world on some of the things that maybe someone can do. Let's start on the spiritual level.
Okay.
Spiritually to prepare themselves even for a fast or to begin this process.
I think this stage in fasting is really important. And I would say just check your motives, because so we have a corporate fast. So that means everybody's doing it, right? And which it can be good and bad, or difficult and easy. Maybe not good and bad, more difficult and easy, because there's this aspect where you have a lot of people that are in the same boat with you. So you're not doing it alone. You know that everybody around you has given something up sacrificially and is also doing the same thing towards the same goal. Like, I want to deepen my relationship with Christ.
Yeah.
So that's the good thing. The hard and the difficult thing about it is you're just like one in a couple hundred people. And I think that it can be easy to just go with the flow, or easy just to kind of like blend in. And so I think that the motive behind your fasting is so important. And like, while you have like a communal fast, can be great. I think that it's easy to glaze over your motive for doing it, because you're like, well, if the whole church is doing it, then I'm going to do it too.
Yeah.
But that is what I think that is so important about a fast, is to check the spiritual motive behind what you're doing. And even deeper into that, sometimes I think there's so many different reasons for fasting. We see it all throughout Scripture. Sometimes it's, for a specific reason. It's for a specific ask. It's for a trial. It's for God to like bring clarity to a subject. But I'm speaking from a personal experience. Sometimes my motive within the spiritual realm, even though my motive is good to give up something in order to know a deeper part of who God is, I think sometimes I can approach him and almost expect him to answer a prayer. And I know that there are some times in Scripture where fasting was used to reveal clarity on a subject, but it's not so much that we're forcing God's hand to respond to us for what we're asking for, as much as it is us becoming more aware of his presence and his movement in whatever we're asking for. Because I think sometimes, we come to God and we're like, I want more of your presence.
Yeah.
But the truth is, we already have all of his presence.
Yes.
We are just, during a fast, cutting out some of our numbness, because we're taking away some of our creature comforts to become more aware of his movement and his presence. Because here we already have his presence. We just have to become more aware of it in the movement of it. And so I think that it's important to go into a fast like spiritually checking your motive, even towards like what you're asking for God. It's not like, I want you to do this, or I want you to heal this, or I want you to answer this. I think sometimes I have to go in and ask, okay, I have these needs and wants, but I know that you're going to answer them in your timing and in your way, but help me to become aware of your movement in these situations.
I don't know how you process the idea of checking your motives. That can be a very tricky thing for me. One of my favorite pastors, writers, John Mark Comer, he said this about motives once, and it just always stuck with me. Probably somewhere inside, because I'm just a human and I'm not perfect, I have some measure of impure motives. Like, no matter how hard we try, I think there's probably always some part of us that's like, yeah, I really want to do this for God, but also this is a good benefit too from fasting and doing this and that way. And maybe you struggle with that, maybe you don't. I don't know where you're at, but for me, if I want to check my motives, my prayer is always, God, here's why I want to do this. Here's my heart for this. Would you reveal or change any impure motive inside of me? And then I'm just going to trust God that he's a big enough God and he's a good enough God that he's going to do that. And that honesty of thought and offering of motive to him is enough for him. There's no like magical box. You don't have to like pray for 3 days to make sure your motive's right before you can even start your fast. Like anything that you would do or say to that, and when it comes to
I think like what you said about the motive quote, and that kind of sticks with you. One of, a scripture that always sticks with me is straight from the mouth of David in Psalms, like, create in me a pure heart. And I think just praying that, like, you might not feel a change, you might not notice anything different, but even just voicing that to God and just trusting that he hears it and he knows, And that I think the second part of that for me personally is if I pray that prayer and if I ask these things of God to like show me my motives, I have to listen.
Yeah.
And then the third step in that, I mean, like if I'm asking, that's step 1, step 2 is listening, and step 3 is doing it.
Yeah.
Because if he does reveal, and if he is poking in on this, like, oh, I don't think that this little area right here is really surrendered to me, then it's the change and having the bold move to change it.
Yeah, it's good. So in your story, as we open up this about even how you're approaching this fast, you talked a little bit about the process of how you even picked what you were going to be fasting this year. I know there's a lot of different options out there for people who want to fast. There's like a partial fast where you do like some food or maybe water and some food, and then you cut out certain things, like cutting out sweets would be an example of a partial fast. There's Daniel fast. There are abstaining from other things like social media or Netflix or whatever that looks like. Describe to me the process of picking the right kind of fast, what that looks like, what maybe someone should think about when it comes to picking the right sort of fast.
Yeah, I think that sometimes there's this pressure to like pick something really good and like pick the right thing. Like what if I pick the wrong thing?
People overthink it.
Yes. Yeah, overthink it for sure. I think that it's not like I'm going to pray. And I mean, God may just like really give you that nudge in your spirit to like give up something, but sometimes you just might ask God to be like, oh, what am I giving up this year, God? And you just feel neither one way or the other, then you just pick it, just pick something and roll with it. But I do think that like if you do have a nudge just to like this year, for me, it wasn't food. And so I'm going to pick something else, right?
Yeah.
And being okay with that and just allowing God to meet you where you're at and what you give up. But I do think that there is a pressure of like to give up something really good. But that shouldn't be.
Or even give up a lot of things. Like I felt that even coming into this year's fast. I'll share a little bit. Like, oh, I'm a pastor, so I have to give up like a bunch of these different things. And I was just sitting at my house over break, and I was thinking about it, and I was praying, and I'm just like, no, what's the thing that like, what's the one thing that I always reach for, that whenever I am needing comfort or just wanting to feel normal, and I said, that's the thing. Like I'm gonna get rid of that thing, because when it starts to become my go-to, that I'm always reaching for that thing, then maybe I'm relying too much on that, and I want to cut that out of my life. And it's only one thing, but it's made a difference so far for me in my journey.
This might be like overly practical, but I think it's also important to pick something that's like within your means.
Oh, yeah, no, that's good.
I had a friend one year, and she'll think this is funny, I'm sharing it, but she was like, I've decided I'm going to give up my car for this fast. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, wow, that's amazing. Like, do you think you can do that? Like, if you feel called, like, do it, girl. But she was like, yeah, I really think I can do it. We lived downtown at this time, and so she could like bike to work. There were plenty of bike trails, and I was like, it's gonna be pretty. It was a 21-day fast at the beginning of the year. I was like, it's gonna be pretty cold in Ohio. Like, some days it'll be freezing, like there'll be ice and snow some days. And she was like, I think I can do it. I think she lasted maybe like 6 days, 1 week, and then she was like, and then there was so much shame for her. She was like, I broke my fast. I couldn't do it. I wasn't strong enough. I was like, well, maybe you just pick something that was a little too challenging. So I think it's important too to pick something that's uncomfortable, but also practically, not too far out of your means.
Yeah.
No, that's really good.
That's a good one.
That's really good. So I'm curious, I think fasting is a time to be a little bit more intentional.
Yeah.
And so what do you do with that time, or what do you do in a season of fasting in order to make it to the end of your fast? Like, fasting is a commitment, right? And so you're going to make a commitment that I'm going to give up this thing for this period of time in order to seek after what God wants from me. What are some practical things that we can do even during that time?
Well, before I answer that question, I'm going to go back one step, and with like doing something within your means.
Yeah.
I meant to mention earlier that a big part of fasting is physical prep too. I mean, like if you're going to be
No, that's
fasting
good.
a certain food, like
Yeah.
make sure that you grocery shop so you can reach for something that is in your fast because
Right.
Yep.
because it kind of feeds into like, what if we fail or what if we deviate off the fast? Just allowing yourself some like physical parameters
Yes.
and setting yourself up for success is really
No,
important
that's really
too.
good.
Another one being if you're like pregnant or nursing or you have a health issue, a heart issue, diabetes, whatever, do something within your means.
Yep.
And it might be really smart to check with your doctor first.
Yep.
So, and I think that's why the beautiful thing about fasting is that it doesn't always have to be around food, because
Correct.
there are some like limitations and restrictions that some people have when it comes to food. But I think that like the intentional time with fasting, I think the idea is at its core is to replace whatever you're giving up with time, intentional time with God.
Yes.
And whether that means that, like say you're giving up social media, well, it is ingrained in us to pick up our phone and scroll. Like what would it look like if you picked up your phone and looked at the Bible app or did something else on your phone other than scroll? And so you could be reading, you could be setting some intentional time aside for silence or solitude. Like if you're skipping a meal, what would it look like if you had the means within like your workplace to go to a room and just sit? And maybe you don't even, for the first couple of times, you don't even pray. You just sit and you listen and you say, God, I don't really know about this whole thing about silence and solitude, but I know it's a good spiritual practice, so I'm just going to sit.
Yeah.
I'm just going to be in quiet, because a lot of times our ears do not have complete quiet. I mean, you would be surprised at how few times we actually have silence. So just being intentional, like in replacing some of the things that you're giving up with intentionality to spend with God. And that can look so many different ways.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to look like you're always listening to worship music. It doesn't have to look like you're praying. It doesn't have to look like you're reading. It could be reflecting. It could be, asking God questions like, where do I sense your movement? Where are you showing up? Where do I feel like you're not showing up? But I think that the purpose is, if the goal is to experience God in deeper, fuller ways, well, you probably do that best when you're in communication with him.
Yes.
And so like even talking to him about the withdrawals. I mean, like if you're fasting from food or meals or whatever, you are going to have hunger pains. You're going to have withdrawals. You're going to be mad. You're going to be hangry. And what better way just to tell God exactly how you're feeling? Like, this sucks.
Yeah.
Like, I am starving. And even reflecting on, how did you do this for 40 days in the desert? Like, because I think what people think sometimes is like, oh, he's like superhuman or whatever. Like, he was God. He probably didn't experience hunger. Well, he did. I mean, he was fully man. So he experienced hunger like we would experience hunger if we gave up food. So just walking, I think that when you fast, you're sometimes putting yourself in a part of Jesus's shoes, because you're like, he gave up creature comforts in order to spend intentional time with God. But the second half of that is if you miss or you fail or you stumble or you whatever, don't beat yourself up.
Right.
Like, it's in the grand scheme of things, it's not that big of a deal. I've known people before that are like, they messed up or gave up or like ate sweets when they weren't eating sweets, and then they just give up at the first hurdle. And they're just like, well, it's bad now. I can't fast. Like, the rest of the fast is ruined.
No.
There are people like that.
I know.
And there are people that's a mindset. And so, even if you're like that, what would it look like for you to tap into more of how God dispenses and administers his grace, and saying, I feel like I need to quit. Like, I feel like everything is bad. Everything is ruined. Can you renew my mind in this, or show me a different way, or, but I think it's really easy to give up at the first hurdle.
It really is. It's so funny to me whenever I'm fasting. Yes. And you notice your first couple cravings and you start to like, oh, like, wait, why am I angry? Like, why am I upset that like I can't have that thing that I want? And then you realize, how far away from Jesus you are.
Well, yeah, that's a big point of a fast.
Yeah.
Is it really reveals some of your selfishness, your motivations. Like that's what you should expect in a fast. Like
Yeah.
when you're fasting, when you're taking something away, and like you should be more aware
Yeah.
of the things that are really getting under your skin, that are really making you mad, or pet peeves or whatever. You're going to see those things. And that's when you talk to God about it. Like,
Yeah.
Ooh,
gosh,
so
I
good.
didn't know
Yeah.
this was there. Like,
Yes.
this is ugly
Yes.
or whatever. And I don't
Yes.
really know what to do about it.
Yeah.
Can you help me figure
Yeah.
this out?
And
That-
we
Go ahead.
I was just saying, we remember that like he's made perfect in our weakness. And so I just remember when I'm feeling those moments of weakness, it's just him revealing that he is perfect above all things with me, that he's experienced this himself, Jesus, when he was here. And it just makes me relate to him all the more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think that can become the subject of whatever you're doing to intentionally spend more time with God, whether it's journaling or you mentioned silence and solitude. I love that. Or just spending time meditating on the things of God. Like those motivations that the fast is revealing in you can become the source
Yeah.
of then what you're talking to God about. And a lot of times they're the things that we need to work on that's going to help clean out or help us become more like Jesus through this process. And I just think that's so powerful and so important. So as we wrap up, any encouragement you just want to give people, maybe they're mid-fast, and people could be listening to this during this 21 days of prayer and fasting. They also could be listening to it during another season of life. Maybe they're fasting in the middle of the year, whatever it is. What would you say to someone who's in the middle of their fast?
I think that, like, on top of just doing it at this beginning of the year, I would encourage anybody to continue to make this part of their daily rhythm, whether that's every month or twice a year or every quarter, because it is a spiritual discipline, which means the discipline is that we are that we are intentionally doing something in our life in order to know God in deeper ways. And so this is just one of many spiritual disciplines, and it can be so powerful in just forming your relationship with Jesus. So don't just do it once a year when everybody else is doing it. Maybe this year you try to do it in a time where nobody else is doing it. And maybe you don't even have a reason. Maybe you're not like, oh, I need this answered or I need this person healed or whatever. Maybe it's just, I'm just going to take away some creature comforts in order to like become more aware of what he's doing. That comes to mind. And then the word sobriety comes to mind, because I think what we do in our culture is that we pin the word sobriety on like substances.
Yeah. And
in reality, I think that sobriety can be used in every single realm of our life, because really what it are things that we use to numb. And I think fasting is just a tool and an exercise that helps whittle away some of the numbness.
Yeah.
And as we become more aware, it's a gift.
Yeah.
And because I know in my life, I mean, whether that's shopping or Netflix or social media or whatever, those things, like the more that I starve myself from those or take time away, and it doesn't have to be like for any prolonged time. It can just be for a small amount of time. I realize that those things are used for numbing for me, so I don't have to enter in hard feelings. So I don't have to be angry. So I don't have to be sad. So I don't, whatever, I use those to cover up. And I think that even as you are fasting through this time, like maybe dive into what it means like to experience sobriety.
That's
to where
good.
you're at a new level of freedom and fullness.
Yeah,
good.
I relate to that one. I have a friend who's giving up Amazon because she said Amazon kind of
Ooh.
became her social media, where she would just scroll and scroll and scroll
There's
and
a billion
just look at what's
things
out
on
there.
there.
So
Yeah.
I related to that one.
Shopping is a big one.
It is. So thanks, Jess, for joining us for this episode. Guys, if you're tuning in, this is just episode 3. And again, we covered the practicals of fasting. But if you haven't listened to the previous episodes, we covered in episode 1, why fast. Episode 2 was the benefits of fasting. But we still have one more episode to go where we're just going to have someone share a personal testimony from fasting if you just need some encouragement. If you also need encouragement, we have resources available to you during this fast. If you go to thex.church/fast, we have a ton of resources there, from a Spotify playlist to help you in your prayer and worship time to a 21-day devotional. There's a lot of stuff there to help you in your fast as well. But thanks so much for being here, Jess.
Thanks.